Welcome to our deep dive into the war in heaven, inside the epic battle between light and shadow. In this video, we'll uncover the celestial conflict that ignited before time began, a cosmic rebellion where angels clashed, loyalties were tested, and the fate of the universe hung in the balance. Was it pride that cast Lucifer down? What roles did archangels like Michael and Gabriel play? Join us as we explore ancient texts, powerful symbolism, and the eternal struggle between order and chaos. Buckle up, this is more than myth. It's a timeless war that still echoes through every soul today. The War in Heaven, a theological exploration of rebellion and divine justice. In Christian theology, the war in heaven refers to a profound and symbolic conflict, one that lies at the heart of understanding evil, free will, and divine authority. This narrative centers on the rebellion of Lucifer, the brightest of angels, and his followers against God. Culminating in their defeat by the archangel Michael and the loyal angels, the war in heaven represents the archetypal battle between good and evil, pride and humility, rebellion and obedience. Though this war is not described in full detail in a single biblical account, the narrative has been formed over centuries through theological interpretation, biblical allusion, and literary elaboration. This essay will examine the scriptural basis, theological implications, and broader symbolic meaning of the war in heaven, emphasizing its significance in the Christian understanding of sin, redemption, and cosmic order. Scriptural foundations. The war in heaven is not presented as a singular historical event in the Bible. Rather, it is pieced together through passages in books such as Isaiah, Ezekiel, Revelation, and others, which theologians and interpreters have synthesized into a cohesive narrative. A key passage often associated with the fall of Lucifer is Isaiah 14 verses 12 to 15. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning! How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations! For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. Although originally directed at the king of Babylon, the language and imagery used, especially the name Lucifer, Latin for light-bringer, have long been interpreted in Christian tradition as referring to the fall of Satan from heaven. The passage implies arrogance, pride, and a desire to usurp divine authority, traits commonly associated with the rebellion of Lucifer. Ezekiel 28 verses 12 to 17 provides another layer to this interpretation, with its lament over the king of Tyre. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, till iniquity was found in you. Therefore I cast you as a profane thing out of the mountain of God. Here again, though addressed to a human ruler, the passage has been spiritually interpreted to apply to the fall of an exalted angelic being. The clearest and most direct reference to an actual war in heaven is found in Revelation 12 verses 7 to 9. And war broke out in heaven, Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world, he was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. This apocalyptic imagery explicitly connects Satan with a cosmic conflict in the heavenly realm. Archangel Michael, the commander of the heavenly host, emerges as the champion of God's order, defeating the rebellious forces and casting them down. The passage emphasizes the permanence of the defeat, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. Though these passages vary in context and intended audience, together they have formed the basis of the traditional Christian narrative of the war in heaven. Lucifer and the nature of rebellion. Lucifer's rebellion has traditionally been understood as stemming from pride. According to Christian theology, Lucifer was created as the most glorious of angels, an archangel of immense beauty, wisdom, and power. However, rather than remain obedient to God, he desired to elevate himself above his Creator. This pride, seen as the original sin, led to his downfall. In the theological tradition of Augustine, Lucifer's fall was an act of free will. God, in his perfect goodness, created all beings free. Lucifer's choice to rebel was not coerced but stemmed from an internal desire to be like God. Augustine wrote extensively on the nature of evil as a privation of good, a twisting or absence of good rather than a substance in itself. Lucifer, originally good, chose to turn away from the divine light and thus became the archetype of sin. Lucifer's rebellion did not occur in isolation. A third of the angelic host, according to Revelation 12 verse 4, followed him in his uprising. His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. These fallen angels, later identified as demons, chose to align themselves with Lucifer's cause, illustrating that even among created beings of great majesty and power, obedience to God is not automatic but requires continual submission and humility. The role of Archangel Michael. Opposing Lucifer and the fallen angels stood the Archangel Michael, whose name means, "who is like God," a direct challenge to Lucifer's desire to be as God. Michael is presented as the leader of the heavenly armies, a warrior angel who embodies loyalty, strength, and divine justice. In Jude 1 verse 9, Michael is described as contending with the devil over the body of Moses, once again highlighting his role as a divine protector and defender against evil. Yet Michael the archangel, in contending with the devil, dared not bring against him a reviling accusation, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." Michael does not claim authority of his own but appeals to the higher power of God. This humility contrasts sharply with Lucifer's pride and ambition, underlining the moral and spiritual dynamics at play in the heavenly war. Michael's victory over Lucifer is not merely a matter of power but of divine order. In the Christian worldview, God's justice cannot be overthrown by rebellion, and his will ultimately prevails. The war ends not in compromise but in the absolute defeat and expulsion of the rebellious angels. Theological and moral implications. The war in heaven carries profound theological significance. It illustrates the consequences of pride, the nature of free will, and the righteousness of divine judgment. By allowing Lucifer and the angels to rebel, God affirms that love and obedience must be freely given. Compelled submission would not be true fidelity. The fact that angels, beings of immense intellect and power, could fall underscores the seriousness of moral choice. It suggests that even in the highest realms, freedom entails the possibility of sin. However, it also reinforces the ultimate sovereignty of God, whose justice cannot be thwarted. Furthermore, the war in heaven provides a cosmic backdrop to human salvation history. The fall of Satan and his angels is seen as preceding the fall of man, setting the stage for the drama of redemption. Satan's subsequent role as the tempter in the Garden of Eden links the celestial rebellion to earthly sin. The same pride and disobedience that led to Lucifer's fall also led to humanity's separation from God. However, in Christian theology, humanity is offered a path of redemption through Jesus Christ, a path not afforded to the fallen angels. This distinction highlights a further theological point: while angels possess immense knowledge and power, they do not experience salvation in the way humans do. Their choice, once made, is irrevocable. Human beings, by contrast, are granted mercy, forgiveness, and the opportunity for repentance. Symbolism and cultural legacy. Beyond its theological implications, the war in heaven has had a profound cultural and literary impact. Perhaps the most famous literary treatment is found in John Milton's Paradise Lost, where the rebellion and fall of Lucifer, Satan, is dramatized with powerful imagery and philosophical reflection. Milton presents Satan as a tragic figure, whose pride and ambition mirror those of fallen humanity. His famous declaration, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven," captures the essence of the rebellious spirit. In Paradise Lost, the war between angels is vividly described, complete with heavenly weapons, strategy, and combat. Michael again leads the loyal angels, and the war culminates in Satan's defeat and expulsion. Milton's poetic treatment, though not doctrinal, has shaped popular imagination and theological reflection for centuries. The war in heaven also serves as a metaphor for internal spiritual conflict. Just as Lucifer fell from the heights of glory due to pride, so too can the human soul fall when it seeks its own will above God's. the figure of Michael becomes not just a heavenly warrior, but a symbol of courage, loyalty, and spiritual discipline. In Catholic tradition, devotion to Saint Michael has been strong, particularly as a protector against evil. Prayers to Saint Michael the Archangel invoke his role in casting out Satan and defending souls against temptation and spiritual warfare. His feast day on September 29th, shared with Gabriel and Raphael, celebrates the enduring relevance of his victory in the heavenly war. The war in heaven is a foundational story within Christian theology, one that explains the origin of evil, the role of free will, and the triumph of divine justice. Though the narrative is drawn from various scriptural sources and developed through theological tradition, its message remains clear: pride leads to ruin, rebellion to downfall, but loyalty to God brings victory and order. In Lucifer, we see the devastating consequences of turning away from the Creator. In Michael, we find the model of faithful service, empowered by divine authority rather than personal ambition. The war in heaven is not merely a tale of ancient conflict but a reflection of the ongoing battle within the human soul and the world at large. It calls believers to vigilance, humility, and trust in the ultimate sovereignty of God, who reigns over all creation with justice and mercy. The balance of Varanese. The sky over Varanese had once shimmered with the brilliance of the ether veil, a spectral light that bathed every valley, forest, and stone in hues neither dawn nor dusk could claim. But that was before the Shatterfall. Before the balance broke. Before light and shadow declared war. Arion Vane, warden of the Selenic Keep, crouched at the edge of a scorched ridge, surveying the valley below. The campfires of the shadow host twinkled like eyes in the darkness. 100,000 strong, the host sprawled across the plain, preparing for the siege of Haldrum's Gate. Arion's hand tightened around the hilt of his ether blade, a silver weapon humming faintly with radiant energy. He was born of the light. Not merely a warrior of the Luminarch, but an actual conduit, his soul attuned to the metaphysical plane of Lumina, source of all order, clarity, and preservation. Light, in the mythos of Varanese, was not just the absence of darkness. It was intention, identity, structure. From it came the truths that bound the world in harmony. But harmony had a price. Centuries ago, the mortal world sought balance in the form of duality, welcoming both light and shadow into the world to temper one another. Light ruled the day, shadow, the mystery of night. Shadow was not evil then. It was potential. Freedom. Emotion unbound. It whispered where light shouted, allowed questions where light dictated answers. But something changed. The scholars claimed it began with the weakening of the equinox sigil, the ancient ward stone that stabilized the convergence between Lumina and Umbros, the plane of shadow. As the seal decayed, so did the balance. Shadow bled uncontrolled into the world, spawning wraiths, nightmares, and warped reflections of the living. Light, in turn, grew rigid, puritanical. The Luminarch demanded absolute order to counter chaos. What began as harmony became dogma. And so the war began. Arion knew that neither side was innocent anymore. But as warden, his duty was not to morality, it was to protection. And Haldrum's Gate, the last bastion before the Heartlands, would not fall on his watch. "Sir." A voice behind him, Tessara, his second. Her armor, gilded and radiant, bore a sigil of a sun cleaved in half. Scouts report the host moves at dawn. They bring a Shadekular. Arion's jaw tightened. Shadekulars were not mortal. Born in Umbros, they stitched fear into minds, unraveling thoughts like thread. One had driven an entire city to suicide. "Then we will not wait for dawn," Arion said. "We strike tonight. Before the shadow spreads further." Across the valley, beneath banners woven from void stuff and memory, another figure stood on a hill of shadow glass, Mirian Kale, voice of Umbros, adorned in robes of living ink, shifting with her emotions. Mirian had once been a scholar in the Ivory Spire, a student of balance. But when her questions grew dangerous, why must light judge what is right? Why fear the freedom of unknowing? The Luminarch cast her out. Umbros welcomed her. Where light forced singular truth, shadow offered multiplicity. Where light imprisoned, shadow liberated. In the darkness, she found beauty, of dreams, of change, of becoming. The Shadowkiller stood beside her now, a creature faceless and vast. It did not speak, but its presence pressed against her skin like cold silk. "They come," Mirian whispered, eyes glowing violet. "The Warden moves before the sun rises." "Let them," murmured the Shadowkiller, its voice many-layered. Shadow thrives where light fears to tread. Mirian raised her hand and summoned a glyph of twilight, half light, half shadow. Her followers called her the Grayscale Queen, for she embodied neither extreme. But her faith, unlike Aerion's, was not in victory. It was in transcendence. The battle was cataclysmic. At the base of Haldrum's gate, light clashed with shadow in arcs of holy fire and streams of liquid night. Aerion carved through wraiths with his ether blade, its cuts singing with purity. Around him, the Dawn Guard unleashed blinding pulses, searing darkness into ash. But shadow did not flee. It adapted. The host shifted form mid-battle, melting into mist, reforming behind lines, fracturing the battlefield. Then came the Shadowkiller. The air turned cold. Minds splintered. Warriors screamed as their worst regrets manifested in full, tactile horror. One soldier fell to his knees, begging forgiveness from a dead wife. Another turned his blade on himself. Aerion barely kept his mind intact, channeling the light through a painful litany of absolutes. There is truth. There is order. I am the shield. I am the blade. Then, amidst the chaos, he saw her. Mirian. She moved through the battle like shadow incarnate, her presence not corrupting but revealing. When she passed, soldiers dropped their weapons, not in surrender, but in awe. Some of the Dawn Guard even turned toward her, their eyes filled with longing, as though remembering dreams they'd long forgotten. Aerion charged. Their blades met, his of shining ether, hers of tempered void steel. Sparks danced. "Why do you fight, Warden?" she asked, parrying his strike with elegance. "What truth do you serve that demands so much death?" "I fight so that others may live," he snarled. "Do they live?" she countered, "or do they simply obey?" They dueled in a blur, philosophy as much as swordplay. Aerion's strikes were precise, disciplined. Mirian's movements flowed like water, unpredictable and organic. The battle around them faded. In that moment, light and shadow became human. Aerion faltered, just for an instant. Mirian's blade kissed his cheek. Blood bloomed. But she did not strike again. "See, Warden," she said, lowering her weapon. "I do not wish to destroy the light. Only to remind it is not alone." The Shadowkiller screeched, sensing her hesitation. Mirian turned her eyes skyward. The heavens tore. The ether veil cracked as the seal between Lumina and Umbros fully collapsed. Rivers of light and shadow poured into the world unchecked. Time convulsed. The world itself began to unravel, laws of reality bending under the strain. Aerion dropped his blade. "Mirian," he said, "we've gone too far." She nodded. "We always did." The two, champions of opposing realms, stood beneath a dying sky. And then, as one, they reached into their own souls, pulling the essence of light and shadow from themselves, forging a new seal together. Their energies danced in midair, brightness laced with night, dark infused with radiant strands. They wove a sigil not of balance through opposition, but of unity through tension. The explosion of color and silence that followed became legend. Epilogue. It is said that the new veil now covers Tharanis, a sky of twilight hue, neither light nor shadow, but both. The Luminarch and the host dissolved, their ideologies no longer absolute. In the center of the world lies a monument called the Dual Flame, ever burning, one side silver, the other violet. Arion and Mirian were never seen again. But their legacy birthed a new era. An age not of dominion, but of dialogue. Of becoming. Explanation and world building. This story reimagines light and shadow not just as magical forces, but as metaphysical expressions of ideological extremes. 1. Metaphysics of light and shadow. Light equals order, clarity, preservation, identity, truth. Derived from lumina, a metaphysical plane of stasis, structure, and linearity. Its magic is rigid, rule-bound, protective, and blinding when overused. Shadow equals chaos, freedom, emotion, potential, multiplicity. Emerges from Umbros, a dreamlike realm where nothing is fixed. Its power is adaptive, liberating, creative, but dangerous and unpredictable. The two forces are not good versus evil, but oppositional lenses through which reality is interpreted. 2. Thematic structure. The central conflict is not merely a war of power, but a war of worldviews. Light's tyranny of certainty versus Shadow's anarchy of freedom. The battle between Arion and Mirian is a duel of belief systems. Neither is wrong, but both are incomplete alone. 3. Characters as embodiments. Arion Vane, a devout warden of light who begins the story believing in objective truth and righteous protection. His arc bends toward humility and understanding nuance. Mirian Kale, once a seeker of balance, now a prophet of transformation. She isn't a villain, she sees a future beyond binaries. Her goal is not destruction but transcendence. Their final act is not to defeat each other but to unify their opposing truths. 4. Lore and history. The Shatterfall and Equinox Sigil are mythic events symbolizing the failure of balance. The Ether Veil was the magical curtain holding reality together. Its breakdown unleashes metaphysical instability. The Shadeclers and Etherblades are metaphysical manifestations of their faction's essence, both with symbolic and literal power. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the war in heaven, inside the epic battle between light and shadow. From the fall of Lucifer to the rise of divine champions, this ancient clash still shapes our understanding of good, evil, and the choices we make. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, hit that like button, subscribe for more epic explorations, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What side would you choose in a war of eternity? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, the battle between light and shadow lives within us all.